The life of Tom Riddle, Lord Voldemort from Harry Potter. Tom Marvolo Riddle, later known as Lord Voldemort, or alternatively as You-Know-Who, the Dark Lord, or He Who Must Not Be Named, was an English half-blood wizard considered to have been the most powerful and dangerous dark wizard of all time. He was amongst the greatest wizards to have ever lived, even considered more powerful or equal to Albus Dumbledore. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Tom Riddle. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Also, double check that you are still subscribed to us, because sometimes YouTube seems to unsubscribe users from channels, and we would love it if you could see all our videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Family lineage. By Harry Potter's time, Tom's family on his mother Merope's side were the last known members of the House of Gaunt. The Gaunts were an ancient and formerly wealthy wizarding family, noted for producing individuals with violent and unstable personalities due to generations of inbreeding. Because of the Gaunt family's love for grandeur, along with little sensibility at their indulgences, the family gold was gambled away and long gone before their last known heirs of the lineage were born. Likewise, a tendency to marry their own cousins to keep their bloodline pure, following the beliefs of their ancestor Salazar Slytherin, caused the heirs to the Gaunt name to suffer the ill effects of generations of inbreeding and incest. Tom's maternal grandfather, Marvolo Gaunt, and his maternal uncle, Morfin Gaunt, claimed to be the last known male pure-blood descendants of Slytherin by the early 20th century. As such, they regarded themselves as royalty for their ancestry, despite their poverty, squalor, lack of education, and mental and physical disorders from centuries of familial inbreeding. Tom's father, Tom Riddle Sr., was a wealthy muggle living in the village of Little Hangleton, near the Gaunt Shack, who was forced into a relationship with Merope Gaunt through the suspected use of the Imperious Curse or a love potion. After some time, it's suspected by Albus Dumbledore that Merope discontinued her bewitchment of Tom in the hopes that he had really fallen in love with her, or would at least stay for their child's sake. To Merope's great sorrow, Tom Sr. fled from her after he came to his senses and regained his free will and never wanted to see her again. Early life, 1926 to 1938. Tom Marvolo Riddle was born on the 31st of December 1926 at Wool's Orphanage in London. His mother Merope staggered to the door of the orphanage, gave birth to Tom there, and died shortly after. Riddle grew up in the dingy orphanage, completely unaware of his wizarding heritage. Since the Muggle orphanage staff did not know anything about his mother, they did not know about his magical background. Instead, they believed that Merope was a circus worker, as Mrs. Cole told Dumbledore shortly before his first meeting with Riddle. It's unknown whether or not the staff relayed this to Riddle before his first encounter with Dumbledore. Despite his ignorance of his mother's true background, Riddle did have some grasp on his abilities beyond that of normal magical children of his same age, and an unusually high degree of control over them. He could move objects with his mind and cause them to float wherever he wished, manipulate animals and creatures as he wished, speak Parseltongue, and use his power to inflict harm upon other orphans. After getting into a fight with a fellow orphan, Billy Stubbs, he used his powers to hang the boy's rabbit from the rafters. On one occasion, he took two other orphans, Dennis Bishop and Amy Benson, into a cave, where he performed an act, likely with his powers, so horrifying that the two orphans were traumatized into silence. Afterwards, he may have told them in some means not to tell anyone what happened in the cave. Riddle also stole from other orphans and hid their things in his cupboard like trophies. Discovery of being a wizard. When Riddle was 11, Dumbledore, who at the time was the Transfiguration teacher at Hogwarts, talked to Mrs. Cole, who informed him of how unusual the boy was, sharing tales of his extraordinary influence over the other children. When Dumbledore was at last introduced to the boy, Riddle at first believed him to be a doctor or psychiatrist of some sort, coming to take him to an asylum because of what the staff had seen. He was convinced after Dumbledore demonstrated his power by using a flame-freezing charm on Riddle's cupboard, and revealed that Hogwarts was a school for people with magic, whereupon Riddle realized that this was what his abilities were. Tom also mentioned his proficiency for Parseltongue in this same meeting, asking if it was a common gift amongst wizards, to which Dumbledore gave no reply. Dumbledore also admonished Riddle for stealing from others and made him return the items with his apologies. He also warned Riddle to stop his misbehavior, as Hogwarts had an honor code whereupon lying, cheating, and stealing were not tolerated. Riddle was not surprised upon being informed by Dumbledore that he was a wizard. He was in fact eager to believe that he had special gifts that no normal human had. Riddle also showed an eminent fear of death, considering it a human weakness. He claimed that his mother could not have been a witch because if she was magical then she would have been able to avoid dying, and thought his father was a wizard. He asked if his father was an alumnus of Hogwarts, to which Dumbledore said he did not know offhand. Dumbledore provided Riddle with enough information to find Diagon Alley and platform 9 3/4. He also provided Riddle with a stipend from school funds so he could purchase his books and equipment. Traveling on his own to Diagon Alley, Riddle bought some second-hand robes and spellbooks for himself, along with his wand, which was 13.5 inches, made of yew, and with a phoenix feather core from Ollivanders. Hogwarts years, 1938 to 1945. Riddle was educated at Hogwarts from 1938 to 1945, and was sorted into Slytherin House, a nod to his ancestor Salazar Slytherin. During summer breaks, he was forced to return to the Muggle orphanage, which he despised and dreaded more than any other place on Earth. Due to his exceptional acting abilities and handsome looks, he was able to convince virtually all of the Hogwarts staff and instructors that his kinder facade was his true personality. The sole exception to this was Dumbledore, who, though not necessarily suspicious of Riddle, never forgot about his misdeeds at the orphanage, nor his unsettling behavior during their first meeting. In turn, Riddle realized he had been careless in showing Dumbledore his true character upon their first meeting, and never attempted to win him over as he had with his other instructors. In time, he came to fear and despise Dumbledore. Over time, Riddle gathered himself a gang of Slytherin thugs, a motley composition of the weak seeking protection, the ambitious seeking some shared glory, and the thuggish gravitating towards a leader who would show them the more refined forms of cruelty, most of which would become the first Death Eaters. Opening the Chamber of Secrets. Upon arriving at Hogwarts, Riddle became obsessed with his heritage and began researching it with an insatiable hunger. He focused solely on the identity of his father, still thinking him to be the magical parent, as he had held on to his beliefs that death was a Muggle consequence and a weakness. He searched for his father's name in the school trophy room, in the records of Hogwarts prefects, and in records of wizarding history, but found nothing to suggest his father had even attended Hogwarts. He was eventually forced to accept that his father was the Muggle parent and that his mother was the magical one. It was around this time that Riddle gave himself the alias Lord Voldemort to spare himself of the reminder of his filthy Muggle father, who he later learned had abandoned his wife after learning she was a wizard, although in reality he left her after she stopped controlling him with a love potion. Using his middle name, Marvolo, which was taken from his maternal grandfather, Riddle discovered his mother's heritage and the Gaunt's bloodline connection with Salazar Slytherin. Once Riddle learned of his ancestry, it was not long before he discovered the existence of the Chamber of Secrets under Hogwarts during his 5th year, and tamed the basilisk which dwelt within. As the heir of Slytherin through his mother's family, Tom was able to open the chamber Slytherin had left behind in order to purge the school of all those who were unworthy to study magic. In Riddle and Slytherin's eyes, Muggleborns. Around the 13th of June 1943, the basilisk petrified many at Hogwarts, with its last victim being a student named Myrtle Warren, who was killed in the girls' bathroom when she saw the basilisk's yellow eyes. In light of this incident, the Hogwarts Board of Governors decided that Hogwarts was to be closed. During that year, Riddle made a special request that Headmaster Armando Dippet would allow him to stay at the school over the summer break. However, Dippet informed him of the governor's decision and denied his request. Realizing that the chamber would need to be closed and the culprit caught in order to keep the school open and not have to return permanently to the orphanage, Riddle framed fellow student Rubus Hagrid and his pet Acromantula Aragog. He convinced Dippet that Aragog was the monster that had terrorized the school. Hagrid was expelled, and Riddle ironically received an engraved trophy for special services to the school. Dumbledore, who did not believe that Hagrid was responsible for this killing, managed to arrange for him to be kept on as Hogwarts groundskeeper. Distrusting Riddle, Dumbledore kept an annoyingly close watch on him after that. Due to this, Riddle realized that he would not be able to risk opening the chamber while still a student. As such, he would use this murder to eventually preserve a part of his soul within his own school diary, the very first of his 7 Horcruxes, hoping it would someday lead someone to finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Murder of the Riddle family. Around August 1943, Riddle went to Little Hangleton to learn about his mother's family. While at the Gaunt shack, he met his uncle Morphin Gaunt, with whom he was far from impressed. Morphin mentioned offhandedly at one point during this meeting that he thought that Tom looked mighty like that Muggle, Merope's husband, Tom Riddle Sr. Riddle immediately demanded the identity of the Muggle in question, and Morphin told Riddle the full story of his Muggle father, which infuriated Tom to the point of seeking revenge. Riddle stunned Morphin and took his wand, went over to the Riddle house, and using his uncle's wand murdered his father, grandfather, and grandmother with the killing curse. Riddle covered up his crimes by altering Morphin's memory, causing him to believe that he was the killer. Tom took the Gaunt family's signet ring from Morphin and later would preserve another part of his soul within it to make his second Horcrux, wearing it like a trophy at Hogwarts. Learning about Horcruxes. During his 6th year, Riddle questioned Professor Slughorn, who was taken in by Riddle's charisma, about the possibility of creating more than one Horcrux, something Slughorn felt deeply ashamed of in later years. In his mid-teen years, Riddle already sought to make himself immortal, being unable to find any recorded information on creating multiple Horcruxes. He wanted to split his soul into 7, as this is the most powerful magical number, and asked the experienced and knowledgeable Slughorn for an opinion before attempting this unknown feat. Slughorn answered all of Riddle's questions under the belief it was merely academic curiosity, but was deeply horrified at the thought of creating multiple Horcruxes. Riddle succeeded in doing so at some point during this year, creating his first Horcrux in the form of the aforementioned diary, and his second in the form of the inherited ring. During Riddle's 7th year at Hogwarts, he was made head boy, earned outstanding marks in every examination he took, and received a medal for magical merit. Riddle was regarded as one of the most brilliant students to ever attend Hogwarts, a fact admitted by Dumbledore himself. After Hogwarts, 1945 to 1949. After graduating, Riddle immediately approached Dippet and asked him for a chance to teach defense against the dark arts and to remain at Hogwarts for reasons that he did not confine with the then headmaster, Hogwarts being his true home at heart, using the influential position as a teacher to recruit students into his future army and to continue to learn the castle's magical secrets. Dippet rejected this offer, deeming the boy too young, but invited Riddle to reapply in a few years if he was still interested in the post, something that Dumbledore heavily advised against. Shortly before leaving Hogwarts, however, Riddle charmed Helena Ravenclaw, the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw and the ghost of Ravenclaw House, into telling him the location of her mother's diadem, which she revealed as a hollow tree deep within a far-flung forest in Albania. He presumably traveled there under her instruction, murdering an Albanian peasant along the way before retrieving the diadem, which he later preserved a third part of his soul within to make his third Horcrux. Upon his return to Britain, Riddle was offered several positions in the Ministry of Magic, but ended up working at Borgin and Burke's to the disappointment and surprise of many. Riddle set to persuading witches and wizards to part with their valuable magical heirlooms, a job at which he was very good. The Rise of the Dark Lord, 1950 to 1970. While working at Borgin and Burke's, Riddle befriended Hepzibah Smith, a wealthy but elderly descendant of Helga Hufflepuff. Between 1955 and 1961, Hepzibah showed Riddle her two most valuable treasures, his ancestor's locket and her ancestor's cup. Tom's eyes flashed red with avarice upon seeing these objects, seeing the locket to be rightfully his as Slytherin's heir, and the cup as a reminder of Hogwarts as well as a priceless artifact. Riddle murdered Hepzibah by using a little-known poison to steal those coveted objects and vanish without a trace. He again covered his tracks well by implanting another false memory into an innocent bystander, Hoki, Hepzibah's house elf. Hoki admitted to accidentally putting poison into Hepzibah's cocoa, which was believed as Hoki was elderly herself and thus believed to be senile. Meanwhile, Riddle immediately resigned his post at Borgin and Burke's and fled with the cup and locket, subsequently turning them into 2 more Horcruxes using the murders of Hepzibah and an unidentified Muggle tramp. Lord Voldemort's Request. Riddle disappeared for 10 long years. He slipped deeper into the dark arts, traveled extensively, consorted with disreputable people, and began to become distorted in appearance and lose his handsomeness due to splitting his soul so many times, and began using the alias Lord Voldemort openly. He also severed contact with Slughorn, who had become upset for not living up to the Potion Master's employment offers. 10 years after Hepzibah Smith's murder, Riddle appealed once more to the headmaster of Hogwarts, now Albus Dumbledore, for the position of Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts. After a short, superficially amiable chat, Dumbledore directly confronted Riddle regarding why he had requested the position, as he knew full well that Riddle had no desire whatsoever to teach. Riddle, unable to make an open request of Dumbledore due to the malicious nature of his true intentions, simply left after a final, gentle rebuke from his former teacher. From that day on, Hogwarts was never able to keep a defense against the dark arts teacher more than a year, which was attributed by Dumbledore to a curse by Riddle. The visit to Hogwarts was not fruitless, however, for Riddle used the opportunity to hide the diadem in the Room of Requirement, where he believed it would never be found. Voldemort, as Riddle was now exclusively called, spent the next few years before the First Wizarding War gathering followers in witches and wizards who called themselves collectively Death Eaters. Some were supportive of his cause to dominate Muggles and Muggle-borns, while others were greedy for domination, wealth, and fame, and yet others joined the Dark Lord out of fear. Voldemort considered them more like servants than friends or family. According to Sirius Black, Voldemort also used tricks, jinxes, and blackmail to get people to willingly join him. At some point around this time, Voldemort greatly enhanced his skills in legilimency, to the point that Snape claimed that he was the most accomplished legilimens the world had ever seen. Voldemort could read, control, and unhinge the minds of others, and could almost always tell when he was being lied to. First Wizarding War, 1970 to 1981. In 1970, Voldemort started the First Wizarding War by taking advantage of one of the Wizarding world's greatest weaknesses, the beings and creatures they had outcast. The Dark Lord recruited the giants who had long been driven by wizard kind into the mountains, and werewolves who were persecuted by most witches and wizards. Many feared the goblins would also join him as they were restricted from wand use, but it never happened. In fact, Voldemort murdered a family of goblins near Nottingham at some point during the war for an unknown reason, possibly anger at the neutrality of goblins or for no reason at all. Voldemort's army caused widespread destruction and mayhem during the war. Barty Crouch Sr., who was the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement at the time and was known for his fanatical hatred of the dark arts, issued an edict that gave Aurors authorization to use unforgivable curses on Death Eaters without warning, and suspects were sometimes handed over to Dementors without a Wizengamot trial. Many innocent people were locked away. Due to the atrocities committed by the Death Eaters and Voldemort and his terrifying persona, people were even afraid to speak his name. He was referred to as you-know-who, or he who must not be named. Under the staunch protection of Dumbledore, the only person Voldemort truly feared, Hogwarts remained a safe place of learning throughout the entire war. The Order of the Phoenix was created by Dumbledore at this time to fight against Voldemort. The war itself lasted for 11 long years. Testing his Horcruxes' defenses. In 1979, Voldemort decided to test the defenses around his Horcruxes. He placed Slytherin's locket in the Crystal Cave and asked Regulus Black, a loyal 18-year-old Death Eater, to lend him his house elf Kreacher. Voldemort took the elf with him to the cave, forced him to drink the Emerald Potion, and left him to die on the Crystal Cave Island. Kreacher was able to escape using house elf magic and told Regulus of what had happened. Over the years, Voldemort created an army of Inferi from the people who he had killed to further strengthen his defenses. Upon hearing Kreacher's story, Regulus, who had already been somewhat uncomfortable with the reality of being a Death Eater, decided to defect. From clues left behind by Voldemort, he deduced that his master had created a Horcrux in order to become immortal. He took a duplicate locket and placed a note inside for Voldemort to find, then ordered Kreacher to take him to where the real locket was hidden. Kreacher guided Regulus past the cave's defenses. At the island, with the basin of potion containing the locket, Regulus ordered Kreacher to take it once the potion was gone and replace it with the fake one, then escape without him and find a way to destroy the Horcrux. Regulus drank the potion himself, and when he tried to get water from the lake to quench his thirst, he was dragged to his death by the Inferi. Kreacher obeyed his master's orders and switched the lockets before escaping. However, despite his best efforts, he was unable to destroy the Horcrux. During this time, Voldemort gave his old diary to Lucius Malfoy, one of his most loyal Death Eaters, and ordered him to hide it. Malfoy kept it safe in his manor, but the Dark Lord never told him that the diary contained a fragment of his soul. Voldemort informed him only that the diary was cleverly charmed, and smuggling it into Hogwarts will cause the reopening of the legendary Chamber of Secrets and send the basilisk living inside the chamber to finish Slytherin's idea of cleansing the school of all Muggleborns, thus proving that Voldemort was Slytherin's true heir. Voldemort also left the Hufflepuff cup in the care of Bellatrix Lestrange, another of his loyal Death Eaters. Bellatrix, much like her brother-in-law Lucius, was ordered to hide it, so she stored it in her family vault at Gringotts Wizarding Bank, which was considered to be impossible to plunder. She treated the object with extreme priority, although Voldemort hadn't informed her that the cup was a Horcrux. The cup was protected by the bank's extensive security measures, but Lestrange casted some protective curses on it, like a spell that would cause any object to multiply exponentially if touched by anyone other than the vault's owners, or to cause the object itself to grow hot as fire and burn the flesh of anyone trying to remove it without authorization. Probably during this time, he returned Gaunt's ring to the Gaunt shack. He placed the ring inside a golden box and hid it beneath the shack's rotting floorboard, setting up many protective enchantments to deter outsiders from entering the shack and finding the ring. He also placed a powerful curse on the ring as well, one that would quickly lead to the death of the ring's wearer if not stemmed. The Prophecy. 10 years into the war, when Voldemort was at the height of his dominion, a prophecy was given by Sybil Trelawney to Albus Dumbledore which predicted the fall of the Dark Lord. The prophecy was given in the Hogshead Inn during an interview for the position of Professor of Divination. This prophecy was overheard by Death Eater and informant Severus Snape. According to Dumbledore, Snape only heard half of the prophecy and was then thrown out by the barman, Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's brother. He relayed to Voldemort what he had heard, not realizing that he had missed an important part of the message. Trelawney's description of the night's events was a bit different, however, as she stated that after feeling ill, Aberforth burst into the room with Snape in tow, whom he had caught eavesdropping at the door. This is in contrast with Dumbledore's description of events. However, this may be due to the fact that Dumbledore had wished to conceal the identity of the spy from Harry and told him a simplified version of the events. In any case, Voldemort received only the first part of the prophecy. Feeling threatened, he sprang into action to prevent the fulfillment of the prophecy. There were, at the time, 2 babies to whom the prophecy could have referred: Harry Potter, the half-blood son of James and Lily Potter, and Neville Longbottom, the pure-blood son of Frank and Alice Longbottom. Both families had sought to thwart Voldemort 3 times, and both families were members of the Order of the Phoenix. Both children in question were born at the end of the 7th month, July. Voldemort chose to target Harry instead of Neville. Dumbledore suspected that this was because Harry shared a similar family heritage with Voldemort, both of them being half-bloods. First fall from grace. Sometime after Harry's birth, Peter Pettigrew, member of the Order of the Phoenix and Potter's secret keeper, began working as a Death Eater for Voldemort. On the 31st of October 1981, he told Voldemort of their location. The Dark Lord traveled into the Godric's Hollow, and with the Potter's Fidelius charm broken, he simply walked into their home. Once inside, he proceeded to murder James and Lily, who did not have their wands. However, when he used the killing curse on Harry, it rebounded and seemingly obliterated his body. This happened because Lily lovingly sacrificed her life to protect her son, creating a powerful defense of ancient magic around Harry which protected him for many years. After 11 years of domination and warfare, Voldemort was defeated for the first time. It was at this point that Voldemort's next Horcrux was unknowingly created. Years of experimentation, murder, and deliberately ripping apart his soul into so many Horcruxes had rendered the remainder of his soul so unstable that when his body was destroyed, a small shard of his soul broke apart from the rest and latched onto the only other living being that remained in the room: Harry Potter himself. The soul shard latched onto Harry's own soul, granting him some of the Dark Lord's own powers and providing him with a latent connection to Voldemort's own mind. Ironically, Harry became the Dark Lord's 6th Horcrux, the desired number Voldemort wanted in order to split his soul into 7 pieces. What remained of Voldemort's mangled soul swiftly escaped from the ruins of the house that same night. Missing years, 1981 to 1994. After Voldemort's first fall from domination, the Death Eaters dispersed and attempted to return to normal life. Many claimed they had been under the Imperious Curse, while others stayed true to their master and continued his work, most notably the Lestrange family, who were eventually taken into custody, convicted at trial, and imprisoned in Azkaban. Most of them, however, managed ultimately to remain free and to reintegrate into society. Voldemort lost his physical form and magical powers, but he remained alive in ghostly form. The Horcruxes he had created kept his spirit bound to the physical world. He retreated to the forests of Albania, where he previously found his 5th Horcrux, and waited for his faithful Death Eaters to find him, but many of them now believed he was dead, and those still faithful to him were either dead or in Azkaban. His one remaining power was possession. He gained physical form by inhabiting animals, mainly snakes, though he disliked doing so because the bodies of such animals were ill-equipped to perform magic, and because his possession significantly reduced their lifespans, none of his hosts survived for too long, and he would be forced back to spirit form. Search for the Philosopher's Stone. In 1991, Voldemort formed a plan to regain his physical body. Hogwarts professor Quirinius Quirrell had made a voyage to Albania, where his foolish and gullible mind was vulnerable to Voldemort. He latched onto Quirrell's body and came back to England with him. Somehow, Voldemort learned of the Philosopher's Stone and how it could somehow return him to its physical form. He ordered Quirrell to steal the stone from Vault 713 in Gringotts Wizarding Bank so he could make the Elixir of Life. Voldemort discovered the stone had been removed earlier that same day, and through Quirrell's connections at Hogwarts learned it was hidden at the school. The same year that Voldemort set to the task of stealing the stone, Harry Potter began his first year at Hogwarts. There were many barriers protecting the stone. Severus Snape, who had switched sides near the end of the war and became a professor of potions, was suspicious of Quirrell and hounded him relentlessly. On the 31st of October, Quirrell released a troll into the Hogwarts dungeons as a distraction and snuck to the 3rd floor corridor, where the stone was being hidden. Snape followed him and blocked him off, but he had been bitten on the leg by the 3-headed dog Fluffy in the process. Voldemort was not to be stopped. Later in the year, during a Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, Voldemort ordered Quirrell to kill Harry Potter. Quirrell jinxed Harry's broomstick to throw him off, but Snape tried to save Harry with a counter curse. Hermione Granger, observing the crowd through binoculars to figure out who was jinxing the broom, saw Snape discreetly uttering the counter curse incantation, but erroneously assumed he was performing the actual curse. Running to Snape's stand and setting fire to his robes to distract him and make him stop, she accidentally knocked Quirrell over. This meant that Quirrell broke the necessary eye contact for performing his spell correctly. Drinking unicorn blood. Throughout the year, hosting Voldemort's soul drastically weakened Quirrell's body. Voldemort ordered Quirrell to prey on unicorns in the Forbidden Forest and drink their blood so he could gain strength from the unicorn's healing abilities and keep Quirrell alive. Quirrell met Harry, Draco Malfoy, and Fang there, and was about to attack Harry until the centaur Firenze rescued him. About a week before Harry's exams, Harry overheard a conversation between Voldemort and Quirrell in which the Dark Lord ordered the defense teacher to try to get the stone again. Potter mistook the conversation for an argument between Snape and Quirrell because after the match with Hufflepuff, he saw the potions master trying to imitate Quirrell. Voldemort, perfectly aware of Hagrid's love for magical creatures from their school days, and well knowing that Fluffy belonged to the half-giant, forced Quirrell to trick the Hogwarts groundskeeper into telling him how to get past the three-headed dog. One day at the Hogshead in Hogsmeade, a hooded Quirrell met Hagrid and enticed him into a card game with the wager of a dragon egg. Hagrid assumed that the mysterious man was a dragon dealer and fellow dangerous creature enthusiast. Under the influence of a fair amount of mead, Hagrid divulged to Quirrell that playing music for Fluffy would put him to sleep. In the underground chambers. On June 4th, 1992, Voldemort ordered Quirrell to send a fake letter to Albus Dumbledore, asking him to go to the Ministry of Magic. Voldemort moved forward with his goal, moving through the security barriers of the Mirror of Erised. Quirrell saw himself presenting the stone to his master, but could not figure out how to get it. It was only when Harry arrived, believing he was protecting the stone from Snape, that Voldemort saw a way to get it. Dumbledore would later say only those who wanted to find the stone but not use it could get it from the mirror. Voldemort figured this out and Quirrell attacked Harry. When he touched Harry, however, his hands blistered and burned. Harry placed his hands on Quirrell's face, severely injuring him. However, before Quirrell could harm Harry, Dumbledore appeared and Voldemort's soul fled, killing Quirrell in the process. Voldemort returned to the Albanian forest weaker than ever. He had to wait yet again for someone to help him. Reopening the Chamber of Secrets. When Voldemort, after an unsuccessful attempt to steal the Philosopher's Stone, was still hiding in Albania, Lucius Malfoy was still in possession of his diary. In the summer of 1992, Arthur Weasley began conducting raids on several wizarding households to confiscate dark or illegally enchanted objects under his recently proposed Muggle Protection Act. Before Malfoy Manor could be raided, Lucius sold several of his more incriminating possessions at Borgin and Burke's and set in motion the old task that Voldemort assigned him, which involved reopening the Chamber of Secrets. At Flourish and Blotts, Malfoy planted the diary on 11-year-old Ginny Weasley, who brought it to Hogwarts. By doing so, he hoped to kill two birds with one stone. He would rid himself of any ties connecting the dark arts, and he would discredit Arthur Weasley. Ginny began writing in it and found that a 16-year-old Tom Riddle was answering. She found comfort in the diary, confiding it with her worries, not knowing that she was being manipulated. Riddle would always have sympathy. The diary slowly drained the life and energy from Ginny, transferring it to itself. Under the diary's control, Ginny reopened the Chamber of Secrets and released the basilisk, which petrified several students. While possessed, she also killed Hagrid's roosters and wrote threatening messages on the school corridors in rooster blood. Ginny became upset and confused, knowing that the diary was doing something to her, and tried to flush it down the toilet in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Harry and Ginny's brother, Ron, accidentally stumbled upon it, and Harry began communicating with the diary. Destruction of the diary. When Ginny saw that Harry had the diary, she stole it back, for she did not want Harry to find out all the things she had written in the diary, or what she had done while under its influence. When this piece of Voldemort's soul was ready to take his physical form from Ginny's life, the diary lured her into the chamber while ignoring her pleas and cries for mercy. Harry found Ginny in time and destroyed the basilisk with Godric Gryffindor's sword. Fawkes also arrived, summoned by Harry's profound devotion and loyalty to Dumbledore. This encounter and Horcrux is what revealed Voldemort's past as Tom Marvolo Riddle to Harry. At first, Harry thought he was an ally and asked him to help. Then, when revealing his future identity to Harry, Riddle implied that he wanted to kill Harry in revenge for destroying him over even continuing Salazar Slytherin's wish of purging the school of Muggleborns. Instinctively, Harry used the basilisk's fang to stab the diary, thinking it would destroy its dark power. Not only was the diary destroyed, but Harry also unknowingly destroyed one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. As Dumbledore surmised, the shard of Voldemort's soul that contained his core identity was still in hiding in Albania, and remained unaware of these occurrences for at least another year and a half. Returned to full strength, 1994 to 95. In the summer of 1994, when Voldemort had all but given up hope of obtaining any help from his former servants, Peter Pettigrew, also known as Wormtail, who had faked his own death years earlier and hid from authorities in his animagus form of a rat, traveled to Albania. Wormtail, tired of traveling and hungry, decided to eat something in an inn near the forest in which Voldemort was hiding. He was found there by Bertha Jorkins, a Ministry of Magic worker who was on holiday in Albania. Although she recognized Peter, Pettigrew lured her into Voldemort's forest hideout and overpowered her before handing her over to the Dark Lord. Upon torturing her, Voldemort was surprised to find that someone had put a powerful memory charm on her. After breaking the charm, Voldemort learned from her that this year the Triwizard Tournament would be held at Hogwarts, and that Alastor Moody, an ex-Auror, would teach defense against the dark arts. She also revealed to him that Bartemius Crouch Jr., one of his loyal Death Eaters, who had been imprisoned in Azkaban after his fall and was thought to be dead, is indeed alive. Bartemius Crouch Sr. was concealing his son at his home after helping him escape prison. Jorkins had stumbled upon Crouch Jr. at his house, and Crouch Sr. placed a memory charm on her so that she would not report it. Voldemort, unable to possess her body and mind, which were damaged by the spells he cast, murdered her. Voldemort, knowing that Wormtail had been deemed dead by the wizarding community and would have attracted too much attention, didn't possess his body either. Together they built a rudimentary body that Voldemort used for travel and performing magic. While in this form, Voldemort was forced to drink a rudimentary body potion made from unicorn blood and venom from Nagini, a snake he befriended, to sustain his life. At some point after Jorkins' murder, he turned Nagini into his last Horcrux, believing his soul being in 7 pieces. Knowing that Dumbledore was sure to have seen to it that the Philosopher's Stone was destroyed, Voldemort knew he would not be able to use the Elixir of Life to create a new body for himself. Voldemort decided to attempt an old piece of ritualistic dark magic to create a potion that would restore him to a body. He made plans to travel to England in order to obtain 2 of the 3 ingredients, a bone from his father and the blood of his most hated enemy, Harry Potter. The 3rd ingredient, the flesh of a servant willingly given, he would obtain from Wormtail himself. Triwizard Tournament plot. Returning to the Riddle house in Little Hangleton, Voldemort set his sights upon finally killing Harry Potter. He considered kidnapping Harry during the 422nd Quidditch World Cup, where protection from his relatives and Dumbledore would not be so effective, but he was not strong enough to do it with the whole horde of Ministry employees running about, and instead began to concoct a plan to have the boy delivered to him instead, which led to Bartemius Crouch's infiltration of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry under the guise of the far-famed Auror, Alastor Moody. As they were discussing their plans, Voldemort and Wormtail were unaware that a Muggle caretaker of the Riddle house, Frank Bryce, who had been suspected by the villagers for the murder of the Riddle family for half a century, had been standing behind the door, eavesdropping on their plans. When Nagini arrived in the corridor and spotted him, she informed Voldemort in Parseltongue about his presence. Voldemort invited him into the room, and after a short conversation, he killed him for overhearing their plan. Eve of War. During the Quidditch World Cup, Barty Crouch Jr. escaped from his father's enchantments and cast the Dark Mark, but was quickly recaptured again. Voldemort and Wormtail went to the Crouch estate, where Voldemort placed Crouch Sr. under the Imperious Curse and freed Crouch Jr. for good. Voldemort ordered Crouch Jr. and Pettigrew to capture Moody at his home. When they did it, Crouch placed Moody under Imperious Curse and created Polyjuice Potion, which he used to impersonate Moody for the entire school year. He influenced the tournament for months, ensuring that Harry would be the one to get to the Triwizard Cup first, which, unbeknownst to anybody, was a portkey. Meanwhile, Voldemort returned to the Crouch estate with Wormtail, where they ordered Crouch Sr. to continue about his business as usual. When Crouch Sr. started to show signs of resisting the Imperious Curse, Voldemort decided it was no longer safe to allow him to leave the house, and instead made him stay home under the presumption of being sick. In late May of 1995, Crouch Sr. continued to fight through Voldemort's control and eventually escaped due to Wormtail's negligence. Voldemort quickly alerted Crouch Jr. to stop his father at all costs, as he surmised that Crouch was intending to tell Dumbledore all about his past actions and Voldemort's plans. Upon Jr.'s success, Voldemort spared Pettigrew from being given to Nagini as meat, instead opting to punish him with the Cruciatus Curse. Return of Lord Voldemort. On the 24th of June 1995, Harry, in the spirit of sportsmanship, requested Cedric Diggory to tie him for the win. When they both touched the portkey, they were transported into a Little Hangleton graveyard, where Wormtail and Voldemort were waiting. Under Voldemort's orders, Pettigrew murdered Cedric with the killing curse and went on to have Harry tightly bound and gagged to the Riddle family tombstone. After Wormtail had placed Voldemort's rudimentary body into a cauldron containing the near-finished potion, he added the first two ingredients, before he proceeded to obtain Harry's blood and added to the potion for his master's rebirth. The ritual was now complete. Voldemort regained his physical body and emerged from the cauldron. Calling on Wormtail to robe him, the reborn Dark Lord took some time examining his body and getting reaccustomed to it. He then called for his servant to show him his arm and used the now activated Dark Mark, summoning the Death Eaters. Those who were perhaps most loyal to him, save for those who willingly went to Azkaban in his name, appeared. Voldemort welcomed them before he scorned them for believing him to be dead and informed them that he would expect better of them now that he had returned. He rewarded Wormtail by constructing a silver hand. Duel in Little Hangleton. Voldemort then set his attention on Harry and began to mock and humiliate the boy before the Death Eaters. He then had Harry untied so he could force the young wizard into a duel, where the Dark Lord had a greater advantage over Harry. After inflicting the Cruciatus Curse several times and the Imperious Curse on Harry, Voldemort was ready to end the one-sided duel and kill Harry once and for all. Yet as Voldemort cast Avada Kedavra, Harry simultaneously cast Expelliarmus, and their twin core wands became locked in Priori Incantatem. People who had been killed by Voldemort's wand came out as spectral visions. First Diggory, then Bryce, then Jorkins, followed by Lily and James Potter. They encouraged Harry while distracting Voldemort. Harry pulled away and had enough time to grab Cedric's body and the Triwizard Cup to return to Hogwarts, infuriating Voldemort, who had lost his chance at killing Harry right then and there, which resulted in Harry alerting Dumbledore to Voldemort's return, which then created obvious obstacles in his plan to regain his power over the wizarding world. Back at Hogwarts, Crouch Jr. was discovered by Dumbledore and Harry, but was subjected to the Dementor's kiss before he could be put on trial in the Wizengamot. Thus, the only knowledge of Voldemort's return was Harry's word, which was vigorously disputed by the Ministry of Magic. Voldemort was able to grow in power in secret, concentrating on recruiting many wizards as well as the giants to his side, in addition to stealing the full record of the prophecy regarding himself and Harry. Second Wizarding War, 1995 to 1998. In 1995, Dumbledore reconvened the Order of the Phoenix once more, using Sirius Black's family home at 12 Grimmauld Place as headquarters. Thanks to the Ministry's denial of Voldemort's return and the Daily Prophet's smear campaign against Dumbledore and Harry, the general public was left unaware and ignorant of his presence, making it easy for his operations to run smoothly and without interference. Eventually, Voldemort traveled to Azkaban and freed several of his most loyal Death Eaters, such as Bellatrix Lestrange. Voldemort had little trouble with this, as many of the Dementors were happy to obey him. The Dark Wizards returned to his side thereafter. Voldemort's first attempt at securing the prophecy was to have Malfoy put Order members Sturgis Podmore under the Imperious Curse and send him to take the prophecy. However, Sturgis was unable to get into the Department of Mysteries. From this, Voldemort learned that the only people who could retrieve a prophecy are the people who are included in the prophecy. Voldemort could not risk going into the Ministry himself, so he used a telepathic link through Harry's scar to cause him to go there instead. Battle of the Department of Mysteries. Members of Dumbledore's army, including Harry, Hermione, Ron, Ginny, Neville, and Luna Lovegood, were sent to the Department of Mysteries seeking to rescue Sirius Black, whom they believed to be trapped there. Harry wound up retrieving the prophecy from its shelf. At once, Death Eaters appeared, demanding Harry hand over the prophecy. Dumbledore's army fought back, and during the battle that ensued, the prophecy was destroyed. Voldemort was forced to come to the Ministry, but upon learning of its destruction, he tried to murder Harry. Voldemort's attempt was foiled by Dumbledore, and a fantastic duel ensued. Despite Voldemort's overwhelming magical abilities, much to his great frustration, Dumbledore managed to hold his own against the Dark Lord, calmly avoiding and deflecting Voldemort's barrage of attacks while also maintaining the offensive. Voldemort then attempted to possess Harry instead, hoping Dumbledore would kill the boy in an attempt to destroy Voldemort himself, but Harry's heart, full of grief over the loss of his godfather Sirius, was able to force Voldemort out of his mind. With both the loss of the prophecy and his failure to kill Harry and defeat Dumbledore, Voldemort aborted his mission, dragging Bellatrix along as he fled, but not before Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge and the other Ministry officials arrived, witnessing for themselves that the Dark Lord had in fact returned. After a year of operating secretly, Lord Voldemort's cover was now blown, and the remaining Death Eaters incapacitated by the Order, including Lucius, were taken into custody and sent to Azkaban. Sometime following this, Voldemort would secretly engage in a sexual relationship with Bellatrix Lestrange. Out of this union would be born their daughter, Delphine, who would be given over to be raised by the Roll family, a family sworn to Voldemort. At another point, Voldemort discovered that Malfoy had been careless with the diary Horcrux and it had been destroyed, leaving Voldemort highly furious. The start of open war. With Voldemort no longer needing to keep his actions silent, the Second Wizarding War had begun. As a result, there were many attacks by Voldemort's army. Mass Muggle killings were rampant. Dementor attacks were daily. The effects on the Muggles manifested in severe depression and grim weather. Voldemort attempted to blackmail Cornelius Fudge, and when he stood his ground, the Dark Lord initiated the destruction of the Brockdale Bridge, sending at least 12 cars into the water. In July of 1996, Voldemort required a spy within Hogwarts and inducted Lucius Malfoy's son Draco as a Death Eater. He ordered Draco to kill Dumbledore, for he wished to punish Lucius for his failings by giving his son a task he could not do. If Draco failed, he would meet terrible consequences. However, Draco was able to sneak a group of Death Eaters into Hogwarts through a pair of vanishing cabinets that connected Borgin and Burkes with the Room of Requirement. The Battle of the Astronomy Tower ensued. Voldemort's plans were carried out when Snape used the killing curse on Dumbledore, as Draco himself was unable to bring himself to commit murder, despite the threat that he was under. Although the Death Eaters fled Hogwarts, the intrusion of the castle signified that there was no longer a single place safe from the Dark Lord. Meeting at Malfoy Manor. Voldemort took over Malfoy Manor as his headquarters. During the summer of 1997, he captured the Hogwarts Professor of Muggle Studies, Charity Burbage, and killed her during a meeting with his Death Eaters before feeding her to Nagini. Voldemort also imprisoned and interrogated the kidnapped wand maker Garrick Ollivander about why his wand could not duel against Harry's. Ollivander revealed that their wands shared the same core and would not work properly against each other. This came as a great relief to Voldemort, who worried that Harry had escaped from him in the graveyard by superior skill. Ollivander told Voldemort that he merely needed another's wand, and so he took Lucius Malfoy's. This served as a way to punish and demean the Malfoy family. At this point, he was nearly ready to conquer the Ministry, while insisting that Rufus Scrimgeour must be surrounded entirely before he make his next move. Battle of the Seven Potters. On the 27th of July 1997, when Harry left for Privet Drive for the final time, Voldemort flew to the scene with his Death Eaters to fight the Order of the Phoenix. In the ensuing battle, Voldemort murdered Alastor Moody. When he attempted to attack Harry, Harry's wand acted of its own accord, releasing a golden fire at him and destroying Malfoy's wand. Before Voldemort could react, Harry reached the protection of the home of Ted and Andromeda Tonks, and Voldemort was forced to retreat. Voldemort returned to his headquarters at Malfoy Manor and, accompanied by Peter Pettigrew, accused Ollivander of deliberately misleading him and tortured him with the Cruciatus Curse. Ollivander told him truthfully that never in wand lore has he ever heard of such a thing happening between two wands. Voldemort ordered Ollivander to tell him everything he knew about the legendary wand known as the Elder Wand. Ministry takeover. Shortly after this, the Ministry of Magic was compromised and fell to the power of Voldemort when Minister Rufus Scrimgeour was tortured for information and murdered, with the official version being that he retired. News of this came to the Order of the Phoenix during the wedding of Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour at the Burrow due to Kingsley Shacklebolt's Patronus. Voldemort established a totalitarian police state with Pius Thicknesse under the Imperious Curse serving as a puppet for Minister of Magic, and Death Eater Corbin Yaxley as the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. The Muggleborn Registration Commission was created to round up Muggleborns and imprison them in Azkaban. Harry Potter was declared undesirable number 1 with a reward on his head, on the basis that he was wanted for questioning over the death of Dumbledore. Severus Snape, meanwhile, took over as headmaster of Hogwarts, while Death Eater's siblings Amicus Carrow and Alecto Carrow became teachers. Voldemort placed a taboo curse on his name, which enabled his Death Eaters to instantly locate anyone who spoke it too loud out in the open. Voldemort chose not to publicly declare himself Minister of Magic in order to maintain an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. The search for the Elder Wand. With his servants taking care of business in Britain, Voldemort left Great Britain to seek out the acclaimed wand maker Mikhail Grigorovich and obtain the Elder Wand. Eventually, after murdering several people who got in his way, Voldemort found him, but was informed that the wand had been stolen. Voldemort performed legilimency on Grigorovich and saw the memory of a young blonde boy who stole the wand. Voldemort demanded to know the identity of the thief, but when Grigorovich didn't know it, Voldemort killed him. On Christmas Eve of 1997, Nagini summoned Voldemort to Godric's Hollow, where Harry and Hermione Granger were visiting the graves of Harry's parents and investigating the possibility that Bathilda Bagshot might have the Sword of Gryffindor. Harry and Hermione barely managed to escape. However, Voldemort found a picture of the aforementioned blonde boy at Bagshot's home. This boy turned out to be none other than dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald, who Dumbledore had defeated in 1945. In March of 1998, Voldemort traveled to Austria and broke into Nurmengard prison, where Grindelwald was being held, and demanded to know the location of the Elder Wand. Grindelwald baffled Voldemort by being completely unafraid of him and saying that he welcomed death. Voldemort then murdered him in a rage without gaining any information. At that moment, Bellatrix Lestrange summoned him by pressing the Dark Mark. Harry Potter had accidentally broken the taboo an hour prior, and he and his friends Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger were captured by a group of Snatchers, led by Fenrir Greyback, and were brought to Malfoy Manor. He departed Austria to end Harry's life, but before he could arrive, they managed to escape with the assistance of the house elf Dobby. The arriving Voldemort caused physical harm for Bellatrix and the Malfoys and forbade them to leave the manor as punishment. Shortly after this, Voldemort deduced that Dumbledore, who had defeated Grindelwald, had won the Elder Wand. Voldemort then went to Hogwarts, where he met with Snape and proceeded to break into Dumbledore's tomb and thus stole the Elder Wand. Learning of the Horcrux hunt. On the 1st of May 1998, Voldemort was informed by several goblins from Gringotts that Harry Potter and his friends had robbed the Lestrange vault. This caused Voldemort to panic, and when he was informed that a small golden cup had been stolen, he flew into a rage. Voldemort massacred all those who told him the news, having realized at that moment that Harry was hunting his Horcruxes. However, he could not figure out how he had discovered his secret when he never told anyone. In truth, Dumbledore first theorized about the Horcruxes and then passed the knowledge on to Harry. From there, Harry was able to complete the hunt. Voldemort listed all the locations of his Horcruxes in his mind, unaware that Harry was connected to his mind at the time. He unwittingly revealed that his last Horcrux was at Hogwarts, just as Harry previously suspected. This caused Harry, Ron, and Hermione to venture to Hogwarts. Battle of Hogwarts. Voldemort then returned to Hogwarts, where the residents had already ousted the Death Eaters teaching there and had begun preparing a defense against him. Voldemort rounded up his entire army of Death Eaters, Snatchers, Werewolves, Giants, and Dementors, and commanded his army to fight the Order of the Phoenix members, professors, and students who were in the castle. The Battle of Hogwarts ensued. Voldemort himself was not present at the opening stage of the battle, as he was staying within the Shrieking Shack, feeling that there was no need for him to fight at this time. While in the shack, he investigated why the Elder Wand did not work any differently from his old wand. He came to the conclusion that it needed to accept him as a master and ordered Nagini to kill Snape. He believed that this would solve the problem by transferring mastery of the wand to himself, assuming that since Snape killed Dumbledore, he was the current master of the wand. In the forest. Voldemort then called a 1-hour armistice, requesting Harry in exchange for peace and no further deaths. Unbeknownst to Voldemort, Harry carried within him the 7th Horcrux, the scar on his forehead, which was formed when Voldemort failed to kill him as an infant. When Harry met Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, Voldemort used the killing curse on him almost immediately, but only destroyed the Horcrux, rendering his scar normal. What was not revealed to Voldemort was that when he used Harry's blood 3 years prior in order to gain himself a new body, the blood passed Harry's mother's protection to Voldemort and anchored Harry to the living world through the Dark Lord. Harry was merely knocked to the ground and feigned death. Voldemort, as a result of destroying his soul shard in Harry, was also knocked out. Final duel. Unsure of what had just happened, Voldemort ordered Narcissa Malfoy to check Harry's body. She did so and pronounced Harry dead, eliciting celebration from the Death Eaters. Voldemort then declared that no man could threaten him anymore. He degraded Harry's body by performing the Cruciatus Curse, and then forced the captured Hagrid to carry it back to Hogwarts for all to see. Voldemort did not realize, however, that Narcissa had lied to him in order to enter the castle so as to find her son. As Voldemort and his army marched towards Hogwarts, Voldemort claimed Harry had been killed while trying to escape. Neville, instead of surrendering, charged at Voldemort, pulled Gryffindor's sword from the hat, and used it to decapitate Nagini, destroying the last remaining Horcrux. At that time, Harry revealed himself to be very much alive. The two wizards then faced each other in the Great Hall. Death. Here, Harry mentioned that by willingly sacrificing himself to Voldemort, he had protected everyone he cared about at Hogwarts with the same magic his mother created when she died for him. Harry tried to explain to Voldemort that he had magic Voldemort did not have, and a weapon more powerful than his, in addition to warning Voldemort of the fate that lay in store for him if he was unwilling to feel remorse for his actions. Goading him by using his birth name, Harry told him that Snape's loyalty was with Dumbledore all along, that Dumbledore's death was planned, and that Snape had not been master of the Elder Wand. Draco had been. Originally shocked, Voldemort remained unworried because Harry did not have his original wand, and he told Harry he would kill him and then dispose of Draco to gain full mastery of the Elder Wand. But Harry revealed that he had already disarmed Draco, and so the Elder Wand was now rightfully his. Refusing to believe this, Voldemort fired a killing curse at Harry, while Harry countered with his trademark spell of Expelliarmus. The Elder Wand refused to kill its true master, and Voldemort's spell rebounded off of Harry's, killing the Dark Lord once and for all. Post-mortem. After his death, Voldemort's body was moved to a separate chamber away from the Great Hall. It's unknown what happened to it afterwards, but it can be assumed that his body was disposed of. Meanwhile, his mutilated soul was trapped in limbo for eternity, as the soul is meant to stay whole and intact for a proper afterlife. Because of the destruction done to his soul, he was unable to move on or return to the land of the living as a ghost. After his confirmed death, the wizarding world at large seemed to be able to speak his name without any more fear. In the end, Lord Voldemort, who feared death above all, suffered a much more horrific fate. Return to peace. The death of Lord Voldemort changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of witches and wizards for the better, and Harry Potter was held in high esteem for removing complications of an enormous variety from many people's lives. Following the restoration of the original timeline, Delphine would attempt to go back in time to the night where Voldemort went after the Potters in Godric's Hollow and prevent him from doing so, hoping to ensure Voldemort would never be defeated. Harry, Albus, Draco, Scorpius, Ginny, Ron, and Hermione would then go back to try and stop her. During this attempt, the group tried to catch her off guard by making Harry disguise himself as Voldemort. When he was eventually discovered, the group was nonetheless able to prevent Delphine's plan from succeeding and captured her. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.